Hi, Christine. Thank you for joining me on Not Nosy, Just Curious podcast. And you wrote a book. Girl, you wrote a book. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Hi, Yvonne. Thank you. Thank you so much for letting me come on your show. Yes, I wrote a book. It's a book that tells the story of a 17-year marriage and living a life that encompassed coercive control, gaslighting, domestic violence, and the sort. So it talks through what that 17 years was like, some of the flags that I missed along the way, some of the things that I just lied to myself about, and then it speaks to the healing journey on the other side, what it takes to kind of move through things once you're done, once you kind of close that chapter and started to move on.
So, just for the sake of clarity, you say cohesive control. What is that, simply put?
Coercive control is the experience that we go through, the abuse that we endure that is more aligned to verbal abuse, more covert. It's quieter abuse. It's not bruises. It's not, and not typically, at least it doesn't start that way. It's not bruises. It's not broken bones. It's something that's very hard to document outside of like the mental, emotional, and then eventually the physical aspects.
Okay, and then the gaslighting. Are these all things that are in steps, or are these collective, like the narcissistic cohesive control and the gaslight? Is this all, or does this progress into another stage, another stage, another stage?
There are definitely components of coercive control that take into account potentially someone with a narcissistic personality type. It might include gaslighting being, you know, someone like attacks you, someone verbally attacks you, and then as you're processing it later, they tell you that's not really what happened, or they weren't really, they were just kidding. That's kind of where gaslighting starts a lot of times. Is I was just joking, I was just pretending, it wasn't that bad. And one of the things that I share pretty broadly is that, like, there comes a time that you've experienced that gaslighting for so long where the the penalty or the punishment for doing something or for arguing your side of the story or your perception or how it impacted you get to a point in some of these relationships where you stop arguing that, you stop telling your side because the penalty and the punishment for having your own opinion is too great and it's not worth the fight anymore. And so then you start to get to a point where you gaslight yourself and they don't have to gaslight you anymore. And that is something that I absolutely started doing, within the first few years of my marriage, where I would just lie to myself and say, it's not that bad. And the reality is, like, if I have to ask the question, I wonder if it is that bad. It is that bad. It is always that bad if you're asking that question.
God, that's so true, Christine. We will accommodate and make excuses, and you're right. Just tell ourselves, well, it could be worse. It could be this. It could be
Somebody
that.
has it worse.
Yeah, yeah. If it's just this, I guess I can do it. But you managed to endure it for 17 years. Did it progressively get worse?
It did. There were a lot of factors that kind of went into that. In the first 10 years of our marriage, there was always another adult living in the home. Someone who, like, was a sibling who needed a place to live, a friend that needed a place to live. There was kind of like a revolving door where somebody was always at the house. So it didn't seem as bad in those early days, because a lot of times these personality types, like a narcissist, for example, might put on a front in front of the public. They are seen typically as this charismatic person, this person who gets along with people, who has this really good image to the public, but then behind closed doors is a very different person. And so during that first 10 years when somebody was always living with us, I didn't experience as often. But then as we made that transition where we weren't having people living in the home anymore, it seemed to escalate. The more successful I got in my career, the more it escalated. There are a lot of different dynamics that impacted that, but it definitely got worse over time.
So your career was still a stabilizing force. You still maintained a career. You still maintained career growth despite. I mean, how do you champion not hating that person? Christine, how do you how do you keep on keeping on? I mean, when you met him, was he just so charming that you put aside all the personality flaws?
No, he was, I would never have described him, and I'm not sure most would. I would not describe him as charming. I don't think he ever was. I think the differentiator for me was, or the component that like drew me in was a lack of self-love for myself, a lack of boundaries, a lack of standards. Because as that grew in that last few years of the marriage, that's when things got real clear real fast. Um, yeah, it just, no, he wasn't charismatic.
He
He
wasn't
wasn't this,
likable.
no, it wasn't like Prince Charming. There was no like magical love story. There were a lot of red flags, and I let those go, but it was a direct reflection of my lack of confidence, my lack of self-love, um, very early.
Okay. But do you think it's unfair to blame yourself for your lack of? I mean, we're wired differently, Christine. So, I mean, I understand to blame yourself as a healing process, but he was just a bad kind of person.
I think there's an accountability piece. I would say, like, do I blame myself? No, I was not the one with the behaviors that created an unsafe environment. That's all him. That's all his responsibility. The piece that I think comes with not hating him, um, I don't like him. I don't want to be associated with him. I don't want anything to do with him. Um, but carrying that hate, carrying that anger, the only person that hurts is me, because he's already proven that it doesn't matter what I think, what I want, what I need, and what makes me feel safe, because there's never been any accountability from his side. So any anger I harbor, all of that negativity sits inside me, and I'm the only person that impacts. So in my healing journey, it became a situation where it was easier for me to find peace in just not carrying that hatred.
Did you go through this process alone or did you seek help, or writing the book? Was that helpful to get that out? Or, you know,
Um, I did start the 17 years. I spent a lot of that time alone. I didn't share with friends and family the things that were happening. A lot of them found out after the divorce was finalized. It wasn't safe to like share that stuff. He had worked through isolating me very early in the marriage, and so I just didn't share any of that context. And I felt super alone. When I started working through the actual divorce, I was in therapy, just traditional therapy. I was also seeing a Reiki energy healer. We did a lot of energy work. That was a really safe place for me because it was coupled with an Om massage. So you were in a totally relaxed state. You were in a place where you felt safe, and it was okay to cry without having to talk about it. And I wasn't always ready to talk about it with a therapist yet, or friends and family for that matter. So I found a lot of solace in alone time and also in that Reiki experience. And then over time, especially as I started writing the book, it surfaced a lot of new memories. It surfaced a lot of new experiences and nightmares from the things that I was drawing up in the writing. And during that time, I started seeking help from a trauma therapist that helped just kind of get me to a point where I could be accepting of the things I was experiencing, but not having to relive every single one of them.
do you believe your path? I mean, misery loves company, not to put it light, but I think a lot of women are in your shoes. Do you think talking? I think we need to talk about it, right? I mean,
You do.
because like you're saying, once you start becoming or getting put in that prison of isolation and everything, and you just cooperate because it's just easier to go along to get along, there's so many women in that think that's love, like you say, maybe the love bombing they call it now. Or it just, yeah, I think it's happening to so many women, Christine, and we're just kind of peacefully accommodating because I don't know, is that what women do?
I I think we're trained, right? Like we're trained to behave a certain way from a very early age to sometimes be seen and not heard. I think there's a new generation of women who are in this boat right now who are trying to change that for their daughters. But we were trained from a very early age that, to be easy is better. And when you pick a path, you are required to follow through regardless of the consequences. And I think that's one of the things that helped keep me trapped for so long was I got married. You don't get married to get divorced, right? Like you definitely carry as a woman a lot of shame in making bad decisions. And it is not all bad. Like, let me be clear about that. Like, I have two beautiful humans that are my world that came out of that marriage, and I would do it over again a million times. Would I change some things along the way? Maybe. But that would have changed everything. And I feel like my purpose at this point, because I felt so alone, is to help other women not feel alone. And the more we talk about it, the more I think I realize that we're conditioned to have this perception that it can always be worse. And the truth is it can. But that doesn't mean that it's right. And it doesn't mean that it's healthy. And I think the more we talk about it, the more comfortable and less alone people will feel. Because I know as I've worked through this book process, as I've talked to women and just shared my story, I've yet to come across somebody who didn't have their own, whether it was their story or their moms or their sisters or their nieces. Like, everybody has a story, and they're all different because the dynamics are different. Some are SA and some are physical abuse and some are this coercive control, but it's all abuse. At the end of the day, it is all abuse, and we need to treat it that way. It all has lasting impact. It all creates very, very traumatic experiences, and it changes people. I want people to feel less alone in this process.
Yeah, amen to that. But like you're saying, the common denominator there is it's all abuse. Yes. Whatever degree it is abuse. And for women it's a burden because it will affect our life and it will change us and we'll carry it forever. And then it's kind of lousy if you ever try to develop a new relationship because the walls you've put up are so hard to take down.
They are.
I mean, you won't allow yourself to ever be vulnerable again or allow that to happen. Is that the right word, Christine? Allow that to happen? You know what I mean? Is that right?
Yeah, you don't trust yourself to make the right decisions anymore. You leave with no sense of trust and sometimes little sense of self-worth, right? You have to rebuild that block by block. And as you rebuild it, you become more convicted in making sure that you never lose that again.
Yeah, that's it. And then that's the challenge too. Nobody can do that for you. You have to do that yourself. You have to champion your own ship. But then you become this pit bull. Then you become, the minute you declare that independence, you almost became your own worst enemy because now you'll be damned if you ask for help. So how do you navigate that part? You know what I mean? Because we all need a little help once in a while. We need some heavy lifting. So how do you, as you're rebuilding, you're pounding your chest, I am doing this, but maybe you're doing it. What am I trying to say here, Christine? You know what I'm saying? You're doing it so much that you're not trusting nobody.
Yeah. I think you find, like, as you work through the journey, if you're putting in the work, I think you find that the strength and the power really comes in being vulnerable and in being soft, and not soft in the sense that you're a pushover and you're a doormat, because you were that. Like you experienced that. You don't want to go back there. But I think like the vulnerability in whether it's sharing your story in a podcast or putting your book out there in public, like there's some power in that, right? Like that's me getting to share my story and he doesn't get to contradict it because that's my truth. This is what I lived. He might have lived something completely different. And I'll tell you that he will absolutely tell you if he did. Our experiences weren't the same. We were on the other side of this. And I have found, at least for me, in being vulnerable and finding that softness, that is a place where I've found peace. Asking for that help it's hard. It takes a lot.
It does.
Start small. Make it something simple. Mine started with asking some of the mom friends in the kid group to help with just basic transportation things, just to help me out with getting kids from point A to point B, or getting pictures because I was at one event and another kid was at another event, right?
Right.
Start small, but when you start to do that, you start to realize that there's not always going to be a penalty associated with asking for help. And with the right people, that's true.
Do you find, Christine, your women friends have been very important?
Yes. I think female and the male, which is really interesting. A lot of my female friends, their husbands have kind of taken me under their wing. If I need help around the house, or if I need light fixtures changed or something, like, you find this community that they all want to help. They don't want to help because they feel bad for me. They want to help because I'm genuinely asking for help, and I'm allowing it. There is good out there. There's a lot of, like, I think sometimes our perception of humanity gets a little skewed, and the community of women that surround me is phenomenal. And I think the deeper I get into this and sharing my story, and the more stories I hear, the bigger the sisterhood gets of those that have been in some sort of abuse scenario. And that community is one of the most powerful communities out there. I can't imagine 10 years from now what that community looks like, now that people are speaking up and telling their stories and living in less fear, and they're finding this outlet from that sisterhood. Like, if there's somebody out there today and you're listening to this and you feel alone, just know you're not. Find the community on Facebook, find someone on TikTok, find someone who's speaking about this today, because you're going to find a lot of power in that community.
Amen to that. I like the way on your book cover you scratched out the words.
Yeah.
Explain that. And then the dual picture is very interesting also. Explain that. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of thought that went into that.
That it's a direct reflection of the healing journey, honestly. So when I started journaling, I had titled the document "The Lies She Told Me." I was angry at myself. I was angry at myself for lying to myself, right? Like, I told myself it wasn't that bad. I told myself it would get better. He would change, that we would get beyond this. And I lied to myself. I lied to myself and everybody around me about the life I was living. And the further I got into my journey, the less angry I got. Because again, like when I shared earlier, like, my peace came from letting go of the need to correct him and to get him to see my side, because that's never going to happen. And I need to be okay with that for myself. And that might not be everybody's journey, but that was mine. And so I was probably 6 months in, and one day I was like, you know what? As I was writing, I realized that she was there all along, and she was talking to me, and she was definitely getting louder. So in the early days, it might have been handshaking, or when he was yelling, or when he got that one tone, my chest would get tight. But the further I got into the relationship, the more drastic and pronounced the symptoms became. I got high blood pressure. I got some autoimmune diseases. I was, anxious all the time. It was 24/7. I was no longer sleeping. It was all of these different things. So she got louder, and I realized that she was just going to keep screaming and getting louder and louder, right? So that's how the title then changed to "The Truth She Showed Me," because she was trying to show me all along, she being me. And then the two pictures, they were about 18 months apart. And I think it speaks to very much to the physical toll it takes on people. Like, you can see in the one picture, my eyes look really vacant and just void of emotion. And I was existing. I was a shell of a person. And then in the other one, 18 months later, it's a totally different human. They don't even look the same. And so I wanted to be able to show that. A friend of mine, I was probably 3 months out of the divorce, and I was sitting across from her one day, and she said, I'm really glad my friend doesn't have sad eyes anymore. And I was like, I don't have sad eyes. I didn't have sad eyes. So I went home, and I'm going through pictures, and I was like, oh my goodness, I did have sad eyes. And that was one of the pictures that kind of had come up that day.
I liked that. I liked that a lot. I thought that's a great cover for that. But the thing you say too that hits a chord probably is the lying. I mean, you become a masterful liar. The lies you tell, lie, and then you got to go back when it's all said and done and try and make right all these relationships you destroyed on the way because of your lying.
Yeah.
You know,
Yep.
I mean, it's like the lies. I mean, I told a few lies myself to cover up, but it was like you said, the shame I felt. So, yeah. And
Yeah.
then you got to make right the lies afterwards.
And I think that's where we have to ask other people for some grace, right? There's a
Yeah.
lot of people who came forward and were like, why didn't you tell me? The reality is, if I'd have told you and been transparent, it would have made things worse, right? Because every single day you would have been asking me, are you okay? Is it getting better? Is he getting better? What are you going to do next? What's your plan? Do you have an exit? Like all of those things, all they would have done was compounded the stress and the anxiety and the feeling of being trapped. Lying and pretending everything was okay gave me the freedom to at least be normal outside of the scenarios where I was with him. And that's why I could still perform at work. And that's why I could still perform in some friend groups.
So, Christine, while you were circling the drain physically and your health was starting to become very compromised, when do you put both feet on the ground, say, I draw a line in the sand here, it's done, I'm done, this is over? And I'm sure there was no pushback. I mean, but when do you finally say, when is enough enough? Was
I
there a
think,
particular, I'm sorry,
no, go ahead. You're good.
was there a particular moment or was it accumulative or because we'll straddle that line for a really long time and we're kind of planners, maybe when the
Yeah.
kids get out of school or we'll do this, but eventually we take both feet and stick them on the other side and then we dig in. So when was your point of digging in? It was enough.
It was right here in this office, actually. I'm in my home office. And he had come home from work one day and it was the middle of summer. He had been having a rough couple months at work. And he was, in my mind, he was either on the edge of walking out and quitting just randomly one day or getting fired because of things that were escalating. And for me, that was totally destabilizing and probably the most stressful thing I've ever encountered because I worked every day to keep everything functioning and he carried our benefits and half of our income for the household. And so that literally would have just upended everything. And in my mind, he was choosing that path, right? Like if you're working towards a path of getting either fired or walking out one day, you chose that. Like you can prevent those things if you're behaving like an adult and professional in the workplace. And so as he came home that day, it was the first time in probably, I don't know, 10 or 15 years that I cried. I like just lost. I just had a little bit of a meltdown in here. And he was standing next to me and he said, he goes, I just had no idea you were under so much stress and I'm so sorry and I'll do better. And I remember looking at him that day and thinking, there's no way he's never going to change. This is always going to be my life. And that was 3 years before I like finally filed for divorce. But it was the day that I committed. I was like, you know what, from now on, any ounce of energy I'm putting into him, I'm now putting into me. Like to get healthy, to make sure I'm in the right place that
The
when I can do
plan.
this,
Yeah.
I'm ready.
Yeah.
So the rule was if I woke up at 2 a.m., 3 a.m., because I couldn't sleep, I would get up and move. So I would walk and spend hours walking in the morning. Sometimes it was 3 miles, sometimes it was 10. And I would just walk. And it was dark and I could cry and I could work through. Like I was just in my head that whole time. And that was most of the last 3 years. And then I started doubling down at work so that I could replace his income so that when I left, I wouldn't have any debt with him. Like not financial debt, but I would never be indebted to him once we had cut ties. I didn't want to have to ask for child support. I did not want a scenario where I had to be required to do 50-50. I did not want my kids to have to ask for anything from him because there were strings attached to all of that. And so that 3 years of planning and executing got me to a point where there was a kind of a final marker, and it was an instant with my son that I started the book with, where it was like, this is it. We can't do this anymore.
So it's funny you remember exactly the moment, but you do plan. I mean, we're not like going to up and do something. We got to plan.
There's
And
power in that. You can start to, like when you have decisions made, you feel empowered, like you're pulling back some of the power that you lost.
but you worked the entire time, so it wasn't like you depended on him for any kind of outside topical need because you worked. The only thing you needed was the benefit package.
Yes.
Kind of, right? And in
Yeah.
these days, that's big. You do need a benefit package.
It is. Like when you're a single parent, sometimes you're paying a couple $1,000s a month almost in health
Yeah,
insurance, right?
it's a lot. Yeah.
And I lived in an area where and this was a choice, right or wrong, it was a choice I made at the time. I wanted my kids to be able to stay in the school district they were in, keep their friends. I wanted to disrupt them as little as possible, so I wanted to make sure I could stay in the home. Because again, this was right when interest rates skyrocketed, and I knew that I couldn't replace this home and the mortgage payment with anything else. Renting a place would have been just as much, if not more, for less. And so there were factors that I was taking into account there. And in our state, I'm in South Dakota, there's an age where the court system will take into account the opinion of a minor when it comes to custody and things like that. And I needed to make sure that my daughter was 12 before I left so that I didn't get into a situation where I was required to do 50-50.
Oh,
Yeah.
smart.
But in that situation, and I think a lot of us, because we know, especially with coercive control, we know that one, it's really hard to document the pattern.
Mhm.
It's really hard for somebody to actually acknowledge there is a pattern. And even when they do, it only will protect one of us, not all of us in the family. So my biggest concern was if I had to share 50-50, my kids would be with him alone. And I didn't allow that. Like when I was in the home, there was no way I wanted them alone with him when I wasn't. And so it's not like we always get asked the question, why didn't you leave sooner? It's
Yeah.
not that easy. It is not that damn easy. Like anybody who thinks it's that easy,
No.
it's just not. You can't
No.
just pick up and walk away. It doesn't work like that.
Yeah, but that person obviously doesn't know the challenges, or they wouldn't be asking that question.
Right.
Because it's not. It is a planning. There is a planning. You don't just, you just don't.
And
You just don't, because there is a planning. But yeah, but you know what? I think a lot of women can't break down the way you have. A lot of women can't dissect it and go, well, he was this and this and this. I don't know if we don't have the dialogue or the language for it, but you're able to at least present some scenarios so that if women are experiencing some of that, they know the language. You know what I'm saying?
yes.
I probably got out of a bad marriage just because it was bad. But as you're telling me and dissecting the challenges, I was probably in one of those dynamics, not knowing it. So I think it's important that we understand, especially that cohesive control and the gaslighting, because we can easily be turned around thinking, well, maybe I did do that. You know what I mean? And you become so, you're saying, that you're starting to believe it.
Yes. And there are still days now where, he sent me a message recently and he totally flipped the script and he was like, you're the one who controlled our finances. Yes, because you weaponized incompetence and pretended like you couldn't pay a bill to save your life. So I had to control our finances because if I didn't, we would have had no money to pay bills because you would have spent it all on race cars and other things. So yeah, I did but in my mind, here I am when he sent it, and this is just in the last few weeks, I was like, oh my God, like, was I the one? No, I was not. But here I am still, even at this stage, questioning myself.
But Christine, too, I think there's fair fighting. They say right away, if you hear the words you or whatever, and you go in there, now you're defending yourself. So you're not getting to, all you're doing with that fight is defending yourself. So you're not getting to the guts of the fight. So all of the fighting has been turned around. What is that called?
Oh, the fighting being turned around.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Right away you go, well, you left your socks. Well, you make me crazy. And then all of a sudden you're like, I'm not making it. And you're defending yourself because they flipped it. They gave you that you word and you felt it was necessary to defend yourself. So you just bought into that whole thing. So the whole art of fair fighting, There has to be something like that.
Yeah, I'm sure there is a name for it. The one thing I've learned in this process is like if someone's expressing their feelings, if it's me or my current partner or whoever, my kids even, if they're expressing their feelings, if my immediate thing is to react, like I'm doing the wrong thing. Like they're entitled to whatever feelings they have, and I
Absolutely.
don't have to absorb those feelings. Like
Right.
you can feel offended, you can feel disappointed, but that doesn't mean that I have to internalize that. And
Right.
like that is a hard one to master, and I am not there yet. But
Yeah.
it does, like if you can get yourself to at least stop long enough to have perspective. One of the things that I started doing right after was I created a text message with myself in my iPhone and just pinned it at the top. So anytime I want to be reactive, whether it's with my parents or my sister or whoever, like I'll put the message there and send it the way I want to send it, the snappy one, the smarty one, like all the
Mhm.
things. And then I'll let it sit because I just needed to get it out. I didn't need to say it to them. I just needed to get it off my chest. And then I'll come back later and realize, you know what? Like they're entitled to whatever they're feeling.
Yes.
I don't have to absorb that.
Yes. In fact, I started doing that with my partner. I always go into some dispute with, I'm just letting you know, this is how I feel, and I'm
Yes,
entitled to these feelings. So whatever you want
I
to do with
feel.
it, but I feel this way. And
Yes.
it has helped me a lot, because I mean, really, it's stupid shit anyhow, but sometimes you just have to get it off your
Well,
chest.
and if you don't release and you don't say, hey, I'm feeling this way, or those words made me feel this, right? The reality is like if you don't get it off your chest, it's going to build. So you
It's,
got to get it
yeah,
out. And sometimes they don't know. Like there's a learning
they
process. They're
don't
human.
know. Yeah.
You're setting them up for failure by holding it in and getting mad about 20 things later, right? Because now it's built
Right.
up.
Right. They don't know. But I want to go back to what you said earlier too, like in the beginning, your gut, when some of these challenges would come up and he would challenge you and you could feel your gut tightening and stuff. I can remember thinking, oh my God, but it took me back to maybe my parents scolding me in kindergarten. It's something, that feeling resurrects itself over and over and over again in so many confrontations. I mean, you might just be in the store and the clerk is yelling at you unnecessarily and you feel that feeling again.
Yes.
So
Yes.
Christine, how do you stop ever feeling that feeling?
I think it goes back to you learn that, and like trust me, I have an incident at a football game that tips the scales on panic attacks because of a situation like that. But I think it comes down to recognizing that, hey, like what they're feeling, the tone they're using, the way that that's making me feel, like it comes down to asking yourself, am I safe? Do I feel safe? I might not feel safe in the moment, but am I actually safe? And the reality is, if they're yelling across the store, I'm probably safe. If they're frustrated or they have this nasty tone, like that probably has nothing to do with me. So it's reassuring yourself and repeating to yourself, yes, I am safe. I'm physically safe here. This isn't directed at me. I had an incident at a football game, a high school football game, and I was at the top of the stands and with some friends and my daughter, and there was a coach on the field that was yelling at a player, and the tone he used, I could hear from the field. Like he wasn't screaming at this player, but the tone he used, my ears caught immediately. And my heart is racing. I can't breathe. Like I'm about ready to start crying. And my therapist had shared with me at one point, like, hey, Altoids is like put something sour or something super strong in your mouth to get your system to kind of just reset or focus on something else. So the Altoid trick works for anybody. It has worked for me anyway.
Oh,
Because
good
you're
advice.
distracting yourself, right? And then
Yeah.
you realize, okay, wait, the kid's not in danger. Like the coach is just coaching. It just happens that he has to be loud because it's loud in here, and that's not directed at me. And so it's just stepping through those things. And I do the tapping to ground myself. There's a lot of different tricks and tips out there
Yeah.
that help kind of move through that.
But everything is a practice.
Yes.
Everything is a practice. You have to use it every day over and over and practice, practice, practice. So,
Yes.
Can we move ahead, Christine, to your certifications in AI and your opinion about that?
Yeah. I
That's
think
pretty
AI
impressive.
is
Yeah.
the
Has
most
that always
exciting.
been your arena? Are you always been in the tech world and now you're progressing into the new AI? I mean, you're certified in it, so
Yeah, I've been in tech for the last 11 years. It was not on my bingo card at any point. I love where I'm at. It was not like I was going to be in tech. It wasn't like that when I was in college. I got a business degree and an HR degree. And I have found this awesome passion for technology. I think AI is probably the most exciting and terrifying, equally, thing out there today. I think it can do a lot of really great things um, when it's used responsibly.
so do you think, yeah, it can be used with a lot of malice, right?
Yeah,
I mean, it
yeah,
can
it could
destroy a
be.
life.
Yeah, in the wrong hands, it absolutely could be. Like it's one of those things that, again, like using it responsibly, like anything else, right? Cell phones and all the like. It'll be a learning curve for us as a society to work through.
Because it's not going away.
Oh no, I don't think so. I think it's here to
No,
stay.
it's here to stay. I think I don't know why people aren't eager to embrace it, but I guess it has, like you said, many challenges. But I tell you, sometimes when you're writing a composition or you can't find the right words, it's an easy crutch to fall back on.
Yeah, it's a tool. It's a helper. It's something that can be in your toolbox. There's a lot of
Do you
um,
think it may make you lazy intellectually? Do you think it could do some harm that way?
I think if we teach people correctly, it could do the exact opposite. I think it forces people to critically think. If we use it as a replacement, say for education or for learning or any of those things, or to do all of my work for me, right? The reality is, if I'm not, it should, in the right circumstances, it should create something that makes me want to question it and to ask questions about, like, is that, like, if it creates a blog for me or something, um, or interview questions, right? Like it, I need to be able to critically think and make sure that those questions are sound, that they make sense, that they align to what, whatever my objective or mission is for the task at hand. I think if we train, especially the youth, how to critically think and how to, assess, what makes sense and to think outside the box, I think it could be a really awesome asset for them.
Oh, I agree. I agree. But I don't know. Academically, we seem to be dropping the ball. That's just my opinion. But I think it's a pretty good tool. I mean, but you're still going to need your laborers. It's not taking over the world. You're still going to need your plumbers and your electricians and your firefighters. You still need your physical, your nurses and stuff. It's just like you said, a tool. But yeah, I've leaned on it a couple times myself.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I like
And
it.
that's exactly what it should be, as a tool.
Yeah. So, Christine, this was lovely. Just lovely. I enjoyed this. Would you do this again with me?
Absolutely. It was a pleasure, Yvonne.
Oh, thank you. All right, let's say goodbye until next time.
Sounds good. Thank you.
All right, bye bye.